In the beginning, beards were rarely cut, mainly for two reasons. It gave natural warmth, and it was rather difficult and or painful to cut it daily. Things such as seashells scraping your face, I would assume, is not very comfortable. In Europe, a faster-growing, fuller beard became a natural adaptation to the cold weather. The Greeks were one of the first major civilizations in the West, and they adopted the beard. In Greece, the beard was a sign of wisdom and knowledge. In Sparta, they would partially shave condemned cowards as punishment, cowardness being a sign of weakness in Sparta, and thus a crime. Things were going relatively good for the beard, until Alexander the Great changed the rules. He ordered all his soldiers to cut their beards for fear that the enemy might have something to grab onto in battle. Of course, Alexander and his army would go on to conquer huge swaths of land from Greece to India. The next great civilization in the West was Rome. Contrary to popular belief, Romans hadn't always been beardless. Shaving did not come into general use until about 450 BC, when it's believed that a group of Greek Sicilian barbers went to the mainland of Italy from Sicily. Apparently, Scipio Africanus, the guy who defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama, was the first Roman to shave daily. Soon in Rome, the word barbarous, which meant beard-wearing, became a word to symbolize uncivilized, dirty, and basically anything non-Roman. Many of Rome's enemies, such as the Gauls, had very long beards, and to have a shaven face showed that you were Roman. We continue to see Rome refuse the beard until around the time of Emperor Hadrian, who grew one himself. Some think he did this to hide scars on his face. For a while, an interest in old Greek culture hit Rome, and the beard saw a comeback. But by the time of Constantine, the first Christian emperor, the beard fell out of favor once again. Speaking of Christianity, it is worth mentioning that the great majority of biblical characters had a beard. Jesus, of course, Abraham, and who can forget Samson himself, a man whose great strength lied in the power of his very long beard. Although I believe Rome casts a negative image on the beard even to this day, the sack of Rome by the Goths and the eventual collapse of the Roman Empire let the beard return. Most of the invading tribes and kingdoms had a tradition of growing beards, thus gaining increased popularity and acceptance throughout Europe. Throughout the Dark Ages and into the Middle Ages, beards are very common. Possibly the greatest man of the era, Charlemagne, had a full-grown beard. The Lombards of Lombardy, Italy, derived their fame from the great length of their beards. The name Lombards actually means long beards. In England, all Anglo-Saxons wore beards prior to the adoption of Christianity. The clergy or priests of England and most places in Europe cut their facial hair as a sign of devotion and celibacy. When the Normans took control of England, the Norman fashion of shaven faces gained popularity. Later, during the Protestant Reformation, the beard became a sign of protest. Those who were Protestant priests grew their beards long, which was the opposite of what priests had done before, which was not growing a beard at all. Possibly because of this, a few rulers started taxing the wearers of beards. Taxation was passed by England's King Henry VIII in 1535, even though he himself had a beard. Elizabeth I also taxed beards. Peter I of Russia also taxed his officials who wore beards and made them wear a metal sign around their necks saying that beards are a ridiculous ornament. By 1700, the beard was mostly discouraged throughout all of Europe. This idea went across the Atlantic to the American colonies. Interestingly, when you look at the 56 signers of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, none, not one, of the signers had any facial hair. This continued for roughly 100 years. However, in the early 1850s, things took a drastic change. Victorian England had a high value on masculinity and courage, and the beard started to represent that. Many leaders adopted facial hair, including the first American president to ever have a beard, Abraham Lincoln. But it wasn't just Abe, it was also those involved in the U.S. Civil War, and you can see that in its popularity when you look at the high-ranking generals. Both Grant and Lee had beards, as did others including George Armstrong Custer, and of course General Burnside, who invented the idea and popularity of sideburns. The beard stayed popular. From Lincoln to Taft, all presidents, except two, grew facial hair. Perhaps the biggest killer of the beard was the gas mask. The idea was that a beard would ruin the effectiveness of a gas mask, reducing the tightness of the mask and allowing chemicals to seep in. Both the U.S. Army and Marines banned facial hair for this reason, and since World War I and the invention of the gas mask, not a single U.S. president has sported any facial hair. Beards continued to be worn by European leaders such as Stalin, but after World War II, much of the fashion trends came from the US as opposed to Britain, where they used to come from. Now, the thing that really ruined the popularity of the beard was not only the gas mask, but now it was easy to remove that hair, with the invention of the Gillette safety razor. The beard seemed dead, until the 1960s. After the Vietnam War, beards not only became popular, but acceptable for all classes in society. Actors regularly had beards, as did news anchors and sports athletes, and everyone in between. Slowly, the beard became smaller and thinner. Today, the beard is at a crossroads with many different styles, neither firmly discouraged like during the American Revolution, nor worn by the great majority of people like during the American Civil War. Some businesses today do not hire people with beards or mustaches, claiming it is unsanitary or unprofessional. In my opinion, telling someone that they must cut off their beard is like telling someone they must shave their head. Hair on your head is as likely to fall off into food, for example, as hair from your face. I have to wonder how much of people's views on beards comes from history. For example, do those that discourage it associate it with wild, drug-crazy hippies? Or perhaps they think of beards as a sign of wisdom, like the ancient Greeks? In the end, the beard is whatever you want it to be. Throughout history, it's been taxed, outlawed, encouraged, required, hated, loved, and gone through this cycle numerous times. So, where will it be in the future? It'll be interesting to see where it goes in the coming decades. Thanks for watching. If you liked it or learned something, please click the like button. If you want to stay tuned for more things like this, we'll be doing this once a week or more, and subscribe to it. Thanks for watching as always.